morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today in our second session on, let me call it, SMMEs working together, thinking together, because we are, even before we went into the lockdown, we are in foreign territory. And for some people, it feels more foreign, and for other people, it feels, can I say, not foreign at all. If you look at lockdown, there are lockdown companies that benefited from the lockdown, and there are companies that are really lockdown negative. But I think when we started the previous discussion, I mentioned the word chaos, that there's opportunity in chaos. And we use the word chaos when it's a situation that we don't understand. If you go back to your driving skills, the first time you got behind the wheel of a car, the steering wheel of a car, it was chaotic because you didn't.
Hi, Walter.
I think we lost Corey there. Yolanda, maybe give everyone an introduction of who you are and where you're coming from.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Yolanda Mabuto. I am from Divine Growth Solutions. This is the company that I founded, and I'm also the international partner for the World Business Leaders Angel Investment Forum. And basically, we are the company that is playing a huge role in the energy space. Our vision is really to address the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, obviously focusing within the energy space as well as gender equality, because it's very close to our hearts. And really the passion for engineering came from the experience that I had from Eskom. I worked for Eskom for almost a decade, and that's really where I was introduced to the world of networking, the world of understanding the role that women can play within not only energy sector, but all sectors across. So basically what we do, we are in the solar installation and solar maintenance business, and we are affiliated with a number of organizations, namely the AMEU, where I met Corey. And I guess I loved this session today because it does not only talk about networking and connecting, it is also a modeling, exercise of how networking is vital in our businesses, in our professional lives, because I met Corey while I was still at Eskom, and I was still serving at the AMEU as an employee, but now I'm serving at the AMEU, which stands for Association of Municipal Electricity Utility. So I'm serving under the Women in Electricity. That's where Corey still plays a huge role in supporting females in the sector. So we met there, and we've been connecting ever since. And I'm talking about like 6 years back. 6 years back. I'm really excited to give my insights and just, to share my journey in growing my business and my brand, because we are all brands, whether we know it or not. You are your own brand, I'm my own brand. It's up to us to build these brands and make sure that when they look at the shelf, they know which brand to choose based on how we position ourselves and how we sell ourselves and how really we connect with the world and with the people around us. So I'm excited to share my insights, and I'm hoping at least some people will be able to learn a thing or two on how I've used networking to build my professional and my business.
Yes, that's fantastic. Corey, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. What actually happened was someone here thought I'm talking too much. So they said, let the youngsters do their job. You don't have to interfere. Let's take you off the air. So we've allowed you guys to just socially, and I just want to catch up. Can I quickly do the introductions, or did you give the background?
Please do, Corey.
Yes, so also in terms of introductions, I really want to keep it short. I mean, you can all read the names on the screen. If you want to know more about someone, you go and Google them. So I started with Yolanda. Yolanda gave the background that we met at the Women in Electricity. And we work together because we both firm believers to do good and do business and connect people and make sure we all have a fair chance of participating in the economy. So Yolanda, I think at your start of Divine, I was actually one of the speakers. So we come a long way. And I think Yolanda's also made a way in the consulting space. the project management space, but also in the international space. And it's nice to hear from youngsters. These are the people that you'll see in the news in 3, 4, 5 years from now. So write down the names. So that's Yolanda. And then on Walter's side, Walter and I at some stage worked for the same company, and we got reunited at the Consulting Engineers South Africa yearly. Walter, is it the Infrastructure in Durban?
Infrastructure in Durban.
Where we were both speakers, and then we said, listen, let's just put, I spoke about diversity in the workplace, and Walter spoke about the future of consulting. And it's exactly what we cover. So Walter's a civil engineer, and he works in the space of, you'll kill me if I say consulting. So he's an innovation specialist in the engineering environment. So we prefer not to always call it consulting. So those are our 2 speakers for the day. I'm going to go straight to Walter to share with us a 10 to 15 minute presentation on his side, how he sees networking. From there, I'll go to Yolanda, and then I'll wrap up, and then we'll go Q&A. We have 4 brilliant questions. Walter, off you go.
So I think my portion of the presentation is just a quick sort of overview of network building, but more a focus on the underlying patterns. So I will be discussing a little bit more the theory side of it, because believe it or not, there's actually a whole theory on network building. It's and the nice thing is there's once you start to understand the patterns, you can see it in your everyday life as well. So let me skip ahead. There we go. So the first principle of networks, I know that today we'll focus on business networks, but the principle of networks is that networks are absolutely everywhere. And you've got to start to look at the world from a networking perspective. And just a few examples would be your brain. The way your brain is wired together is nothing different than a network. The universe, it has been proven, is actually also a network. And if you can see on the screen, there's 2 pictures. They look very similar, but they are actually quite different. The one on the left is actually your neuron connections in your brain. And the one on the right is a mathematical representation of the universe. And what's interesting for me is that it looks so similar, but it is vastly different in size and also in the material makeup. But ultimately, it's a network. And in that network, there's flow, there's energy, and things are happening, and it's very dynamic. So your friends are also a network. Your family is also a network. And ultimately, your business and people in industry is also a network. And they can be the same, they can be similar. You can have friends in business, you can have family in business or not. Ultimately, it does have a big influence on you and vice versa. So as I mentioned earlier, there's an underlying pattern, and we need to look at these patterns. And once you start to understand these patterns a little bit better, you can actually get better results in your life. So going to the next slide, I want to quickly talk about the laws of networks. And you can Google it if you've got time, and go into a lot of detail. You can get lost in these things if you want. But ultimately, there's this thing called network theory, social network theory. And some of the principles are actually quite old. Some of the early principles of social network theory is about 120, 130 years old. And it's sort of evolved as we get more knowledge, and as we realize that there's mathematics and patterns to this. The first one I quickly want to discuss is called Metcalfe's law. Now, Metcalfe's law was initially applied to telecommunications and the way telecommunications work. And it wasn't long before people realized, but look, the principles are the same in all networks. And it basically comes down to that the effect of a network is proportional to the number of connected nodes. And it's exponential power. And looking at the screen, you'll see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 blue networks. And you'll see that there's 3 nodes on the one, and there's 3 connected nodes, and there's 3 links. But the next one is 5 nodes, but there's 10 links. Next one is 7 nodes, but 21 links. And the last one has only 9 nodes, but there's 36 links. So the idea is that the connected nodes talking the same language, so to speak, or understanding one another has an exponential effect. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you've got a LinkedIn account with 1,000 people that you've got a very strong network. It comes to connected nodes or nodes speaking the same language or understanding one another. And that's where the power really lies. The next concept that I want to touch on quickly is top of mind. So a big idea, concept that flies in with this is the concept of branding. So the foremost, the idea of top of mind is to say, well, look, if I need to go to someone, if I have a problem, then you can immediately identify someone in your network that can actually solve that problem for you. And the idea is that if you associate someone with a certain solution or a certain project, a product or service, then you know that you can always go to that person in your network and they can solve that problem, provide the service or the product. And it's very strongly linked with branding. The next concept that I want to quickly share with you is the concept of giving. So networks are ultimately based on giving and receiving. And you can look at any network, there's always a portion of giving and always a portion of receiving. The question comes in, is it good or is it bad? What are you giving? Is it something good in your network? And what are you receiving from your network? Is it also good? And ultimately, it can go to we can look at it in terms of a service, a product, or monetary flow. Ultimately, giving and receiving. And what it really comes down to is there's a line there called the virtues of acknowledged dependence. Is ultimately you are dependent on other people in your network for giving and receiving. So that's why it's so important that you understand that if you're in the wrong network or you are deliberately moving in the wrong direction in your network, you will receive something and you will give something that's not necessarily in line with where you want to be. So it's very important that you understand where you are and where you want to be and start to give and receive in line with where you are and where you actually want to go. The last one on this slide is the concept of vulnerability. And it really comes down to a concept of saying, well, where's the weakness in your network? And understanding where the weakness is in your network and understanding how do you mitigate the risk in your network. So vulnerability is basically a disruption of the normal operation of a network. And I think we've seen in the past 2 or 3 months with this COVID lockdown, immense vulnerability in a lot of networks. And I think it was difficult to see prior to COVID where the vulnerabilities are. But I can tell you there's a lot of people now looking back and saying, my goodness, that was a vulnerability, that was a problem, that was something that would disrupt my network. So it comes down to identifying and looking at your vulnerabilities and really mitigating the risk in those vulnerabilities. The last slide from my side is 4 more concepts that I quickly want to share, and it's the concept of centrality is the first one. In centrality in a network is the most important nodes of a network. So there's important nodes, we call it hubs. It can be a person, it can be a company, it can be a brand, but ultimately there's a central node that usually is very powerful within a network. And there's 2 concepts that I want to just quickly share there. One is that it really comes down to how many people are linked to the specific node. And then the second one is depending on the situation, you either want to be in the middle, which is a hub or a core node, or you actually want to be on the edges. And for example, in this COVID lockdown, you want to be in the middle of this centrality of actually delivering services. But when it actually comes to getting the illness, you want to be on the edges. You don't want to be in the middle. So it's just the concept of where do you want to be in the network. And remember, depending on the situation, you need to shift around in the centrality concept. The last one is wisdom of, the second one is wisdom of crowds. And now there's a lot of people say, no, yes, there's no such thing. And people do stupid things in a crowd, but there's 5 principles that can make the wisdom of crowds very, very effective. And to make the wisdom of crowds effective, there needs to be a diversity of opinions, which means groupthink is out. A lot of people should be involved with different opinions, and that's the one of the core ideas. And the second one is independence, independent thought. Again, coming down to a groupthink mentality is not wisdom of crowds. If individuals within a network can think independently, and also there's diversity of opinion, that's a powerful thing to have in a network. And also decentralization, what it simply comes down to is you allow more people to make decisions based on their own experiences, and not have 1 or 2 people giving complete guidance and management, or almost micromanagement of every situation. And then obviously the idea of data gathering and trust. So that's very important, the trust concept within a network. Then the next concept there I quickly want to share is the concept of a small world phenomena. And the principle basically says is, remember, there's this concept of 6 degrees of separation, and we are all connected one way or the other. And if you are willing to take the time to research your network, you'll be surprised to realize where you can actually get into. But again, it comes down to what are you giving and what are you receiving, and where are you going in your network and where do you want to be. And the last concept there is brokerage and closure in networks. So I've got a nice little image there that sort of tries to show the concepts of closure and brokerage. Now, brokerage is not breaking something. Brokerage is similar to a broker in a network. It's a person or a group of people getting 2 clusters of networks together and making a new link or creating new opportunities. So there's a lot of power in brokerage in networks, where you've got two different networks that don't know one another, and all of a sudden you've got one person that's bringing them together, and all of a sudden there's a new node that is in that network. There's immense power in brokerage in a network, and I think Corey and Yolanda can also confirm that it is by far one of the most powerful concepts in a network. Now, what is a cluster? A cluster is just a group of people. That's sort of, there's trust. It's relates to that wisdom of crowds that I've talked about. There's a diversity of opinion, independence, decentralization, data gathering, and trust within that little cluster. And what tends to happen in networks is what we call closure. That means that if you've got a group of people that trusts one another, you will tend to find that they work together for years and years and years. It's called closure. They trust one another and they work together and they get things done. So that is the concept of a cluster. And that's why it's so difficult to really move into a cluster where there's trust in a group without brokerage. You need to have some sort of an introduction into that crowd. That's the only way you're really going to get in. So and it's a very sensitive situation, and it's a very once you understand these type of things, you'll know who you need to talk to get sort of a brokerage within a cluster. So it's very theoretical, and these 8 points are sort of just a few things that I wanted to highlight as part of network theory and how it works. And again, if you look at anything in the world, you'll find that networks and network theory is really quite applicable. So I've set your questions, but I think we can move on. Corey, I'm done from my side. We can move on.
Well, Walter, thanks a lot. I think it's extremely, I think one of the benefits of being in engineering, we always like to work from basic principles. And to some extent, there's always a very high correlation between basic principles and theory. So if you sort of put the main points down in terms of what the theory says that comes over years and years and years, that's the foundation you should start on. So thank you for putting the theory down. Now I'm going to really take it to the practical environment of Yolanda. And as I said, diversity, because there are diversity in the clients we have, there should also be the diversity in the company that we have. But also it's a society thing. And Yolanda and I, as I mentioned earlier, are very much, let's say, brokers for diversity and to give everyone a fair chance and to bring in new talent and new thinking, because the world's a challenging place. And the more we get people to think about the answers, the better answers we'll get. And it goes down to diversity. So Yolanda, over to you and build on Walter's theories and tell us how, and before you start, my initial question to Yolanda was, she needs to speak about her challenges in building a network. And she said, well, I didn't really have much challenge. And I can really vouch for that. She's such a good networker. So Yolanda, over to you. Share some of your wisdom with us. We really want to keep it practical.
Thank you very much, Corey. As you have introduced me, my name is Yolanda Mabuto. I am from Divine Growth Solutions. Really, for me, this session is about sharing my experience so that other people who are trying to get into the networking space are able to maybe learn from my experiences and maybe learn from my mistakes so that they don't repeat the same mistakes that I have repeated. So I'll start sharing my presentation now so that you can see what I have done to grow my brand, because like Walter said, we are all brands, whether we like it or not. So it's up to you how you want to sell your brand and make sure that you are known. Right. As I've said, I'm Yolanda Mabuto. I'm great to be here. I'm happy. I'm honored to be part of this very important session about networking, because I believe networking is key to grow one's brand and business. I've just shared this slide just to show people, how I have managed to sort of create few networks to build my brand, not only my brand, for those that, are looking up to me or are looking to learn from me. And I'll name a few organizations that are really paved the way for me to be able to be a great networker and also see the need, not only to network for myself, but try and make sure that other people are able to network too. I've created most networks from AMEU, which is Association of Municipal Electricity Utility, where I met Corey. And this is the platform where we really saw the need for diversity, like Corey said, in every sector, not only in the energy sector. And this is where I led a networking and partnership pillar, which really nurtured that seed of understanding the importance of partnering, understanding the importance of networking to grow our businesses, to grow our brands, and to grow our professional profiles. And from there, really, it was just a passion of mine to see people networking, to see businesses getting, breakthroughs, because as we all know that if you don't network, your net worth will not grow as a business person. You need those few business cards that you can have exchange of so that you are able to connect with people and get the answers that you might not necessarily know for yourself. But I'm happy and very honored to also share that through the network that I've done, I was able to be appointed as the international partner by the World Business Angel Investment Forum, which really stands for, again, collaboration globally and just creating access around diversity, around financial inclusion and market penetration. So these are the types of experiences, real life experiences that I've gone through. And we're doing this not only for our business, but only for all other SMEs and all other startups that are really struggling to crack through the market and to really get understanding of how they can position themselves to get opportunities in their sector. So there's a number of organizations that we work with to ensure that we connect and we build the connection, wave, and make sure that people are not only left behind in the wave, they are really moving with the wave. And last year we launched an association, and I think I loved what Walter mentioned about those clusters and the brokerage. This is something that we need to do as leaders in our countries, where we create those spaces for them, for businesses to be able to tap in and gain trust, and trust us first, and then we can trust them to be able to connect them with most opportunities. So really, why do you need to build a network as a business person or as a professional or just as a student? You need new opportunities to be able to get into things that you will not necessarily be able to have or to do on your own. If you are a business person, I'm going to be speaking as a business person that I am right now. It is good to network because you get new opportunities. You get to tap into new spaces that you would not necessarily tap into if you are not connected with a certain person that will be able to open certain doors for you. And you need business networking to make sure that it leads you to more business opportunities. Like I said earlier, if you're not networking, your net worth will really struggle to grow, because you need to network and get new clients and get new people and get new information for new technologies, and also really to understand what are the best practices in your own sector or in the sector of your interest. Because as businesses, and especially during this time of COVID-19, some businesses has been really stifled by this challenge. But if you are able to sort of learn from your network and look at their best practices and see how you can pivot your business during this time, how you can remodel and how you can recalibrate by looking at other sectors to diversify. Connections are key. It is true in business. It is not what you do, it is who you know. And it is important even today during the COVID-19 of who do you know, who do you connect with, so that they can be able to give you new information. And we've seen a number of news that were not accurate, but if you have a network that you trust, you are able to get the right information, accurate information, to be able to make the right decisions, because people make wrong decisions because they get wrong information. So it is important to connect and get the right information from the clusters and the brokers that you understand and that you trust. And really continuous networking is something that you need to do, because it is not a relationship that starts and really ends. If you want to maintain sustainable relationships, and I will be sharing that on my next slides, you really need to make sure that these relationships that you are creating are sustainable. And what is a sustainable relationship, and what do you need to do to make sure that your relationship that you are creating are sustainable? And I also took some few stats and some few facts that I've researched, so that people can understand the power in the network and how and what it has done for other people. And in some instances, some people were able to get about new customers. I mean, 20% of people agreed and said, I got my business through networking. So if you are still not sure about networking, maybe if you listen and after this slide, you'll be able to see that there's power in networking. And some people, about 40% are saying, well, I've got my new prospect that became friends and became business partners. About 40% are agreeing that this helped them. Networking and connecting helped them to grow and get new prospects. About 90% people that I've looked around and said, business cards helped me to create new opportunities, new business, understanding and new ventures. And 35% said, I got my connection through LinkedIn. So there are a number of social platforms that one can tap into and understand and see the value of networking. And 40% of people said, well, many of my people that I know came from me networking with them. And I think it's true to me. It's true for me as well in my real life. A number of people that I'm in business with, that I'm associating with, they're coming from my journey of networking and how I sustained those relationships to make sure that it's not only beneficial to me, but it's beneficial to them as well. And about 85% said, I've been hired through the networks. Again, it is who you know, and what you do. So if you know someone in a company or in a sector that you want to sort of tap into and add value, it is easy for you to get access to that because you know someone who's already there. And about 61% of professionals agree that they've been helped by social networking and any other kind of networking. And there are many ways that we can do, in order for us to make sure that we keep our, relationships and networks sustainable. Through continuous communication, obviously you need to communicate something that is important. You can make a phone call, you can do a conference call, through emails, video calling. There's a number of, platforms that you can tap into to make sure that you create sustainable, networks and communication. And I'll give a few tips that will help you, maybe crack new connections or maybe sustain or maintain the ones that you have. But if you are new into this thing and you want to network and grow your network, and it is very important during this time to network because the world is changing, and so should you, and so should your network, because there will come new things, and if you don't have people to ask around from, you might struggle. So for me, it's really key to understand the background that you want to get into, understand the sector, understand the person that you want to connect with, and understand your why. Why do you need to network? What do you need from this person? What is the value that you will be adding? These are the things that I've applied in my real life situation to make sure that I sustain. And I must say, not all of them, are still, present right now, because along the way you see that, okay, probably we're not sharing the same synergies, and you don't really see the need, and even the feeling could be mutual to the person as well. They'll say like, okay, fine, we can still just keep in touch, but there isn't really something that we can do in terms of business. That's fine too, but keep communicating and be self-aware of who you are. It goes back to what Walter said, brand awareness. You are a brand, whether you know it or you don't. So understanding who you are, what are your values, what do you stand for, what do you have to give? Because it is not just a give or take relationship. It is a give and take. You get as well as you give your time in either way. So for me, it's also important to also build a rapport. Who you are, who you know, who are you bringing into the networking space as a person or as a business person or as a professional, and update your networking profiles, because people won't network with someone who does not really have an experience or history. Update everything that you have so that people are able to read about you, what you are doing or what you are aspiring to do. Because some will say, but I haven't done anything. That's great too. But write or update what you aspire to do so that people can relate with you, and share your knowledge for those who have knowledge. And this is something that I believe in. That is why we've created a number of platforms to share with others, share information, share opportunities. We've got a number of platforms. And if you're not part of Women in Electricity, if you're in the energy sector, please be part of that and ask around what they do. It's a great platform where Corey and I belong to. And a number of businesses grew and were birthed from that platform. So you could be one of the people that could be having new innovations and new ideas and build businesses from that platform and grow from there. And really diversify your network. You can't be staying with the people that you know and that you understand. Sometimes you need to be challenged in a way, get it into a space that you don't understand. If it's technology or if it's any kind of sector that you don't really understand, but you want to learn, go there. Diversify. It is very key, even in networking. Reach out, communicate, stay relevant, stay understanding what is out there, what is the global agenda. And I'm sure we all know the global agenda now is COVID-19, but what does it bring? What does it mean to you? What do we need to do to fit into the new normal that we are getting to? And really my almost this last slide is about the challenges. Like I said to Corey, well, I don't really look at challenges as challenges. I like to sort of twist them as opportunity, because if I'm struggling in this area, how can I change my mindset to ensure that I make it an opportunity? So always be active. Make sure that you are active in your social space, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, be active, comment on the topics of the forums, be part of certain groups of your interest. Make sure that your name is known and you're not just active for the sake of being active, but you're adding value. And be patient. Building relationship doesn't happen overnight. Corey and I met about 6 years back, but look at us, we're still here. And it took a journey. It took meetings, it took phone calls for us to really build trust, you know. And it is the same with other connectors that I've connected with as well. I've stayed patient. Like for instance, the Global Thinkers Forum, it is a network that I'm part of, and I started connecting with them, I think about 7 years ago, but we could only come alive in 2020. And that is the power of patience in this journey of networking. So you need to be patient and not just try once or twice and give up. Engage. I cannot stress that enough. Engage, volunteer, because it's not what you are getting, it's also about what you are giving to the networking space. And again, first impressions matter. Make sure as you approach the person that you want to meet, you are presentable, you are the brand that you trust and that you can pick, and listen more so that you understand and you know how to respond, and pay attention and really share your information, share your journey, share your experience, and share your network as well, because you'll never know what the person you're networking with is looking for. You might undermine your network, whereas you have the power. And I have a quote that I'd like to share with you from a Chinese proverb that goes like this: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So if you haven't begun to sharing up and starting up or growing your professional network yet, so please start today. It is never too late. Even today, it is the time for you to start. So thank you very much. If you want to know more about me and what we do and how you can get into my network platform, please, I am on all the social platforms. You can get in touch with me. Thank you so much.
Yolanda, thanks a lot. A lot of wisdom, and that's why I really enjoy working with young people, because I think there's also the energy to be fresh about what's happening. And maybe we try and stick to 45 minutes. I'm going to steal a bit of time. So generally my approach is when we lose 5% of our attendees, we've gone too far over time. So I want to start with a little story. And those who attend my training understand it, and I didn't think I'll tell it today. So I always ask people, which world do you live in? So my first question would be, how many Corries are on this platform today? And most people will say 1 Corrie. There are as many Corries as there are people. Now let me explain. If you never knew me before today, you've recreated me in your mind. Because if I die tomorrow, I cannot die in your mind except if I'm useless and you want to forget me. But the bottom line is we recreate the world in our mind. So you've recreated the Corrie you think I am. Let me make it more practical. If I go to an interview, do they appoint you for who you are or for who they think you are when you leave? Definitely not for who you are. They appoint you for what you've left in their mind that they call Corrie. And I think that's the first principle you always need to understand in life. That you might think you're the world, but you're not the center of the world. You're the center of your world. And if you think you are the center of the world, it's a very small place. So the point I'm trying to make is that, and it goes back to branding, which I'll extend a little bit later, that you need to understand that people give us credit for what we leave with them, not for who we really are. So that's the first thing. So that brings me to the first thing, and Leisha's setting up a slide for me, but I'm just going to summarize a little bit before I go to the slide. One of the words that came out from Walter and Yolanda, and it's most probably the most important word, is the word trust. And that trust doesn't necessarily mean how I trust someone in terms of when I share information with them. It's about the trust that that person will deliver in line with what the image is I have in my mind. Because if I don't have a trust relationship with you, meaning I don't trust you as a person, but I trust that you are a very powerful person, that's enough trust. And I might expect very little from you because we don't have a personal relationship, but I trust that what you were going to deliver is going to be reliable every time. And I think that's the first thing that I've learned in networks. We don't have to like the people in our network. We're not networking for social preferences or social stuff. We're networking to benefit of what someone else brings to the party. So the first one is not necessarily interpersonal trust. It's purely trust. And I need to trust value. The second and most powerful thing that you'll ever learn in marketing and networking is word of mouth. Because the moment I trust someone, I will spread their word. Yesterday, there was someone in my office and I was looking for a person, and the guy said, I don't really like to give you references because that reference will also reflect me. And that vulnerability that I think Walter spoke about is exactly what it refers to. I will refer someone who's a consistent deliverer of value, because the moment you refer someone in your network, you also refer in terms of their brand value. I think we can leave it. Okay, because you're killing me. So word of mouth with trust is where long-term relationships are formed. Okay. Then before I want to go to my slide, I want to just reflect back on what Walter said with brokerage. The bigger your network grows, the more exponential it becomes. But it also has two sides to it. And that is when it comes to reputation. Because when you have a huge business network and there's a reputational issue, it reflects on that whole connection network of yours. So the pressure grows as you grow your network to also do the right things right. So that's the point I wanted to make before we go there. Then one of the other very important things, and it goes back to how many Corries, and you actually give me credit for the Corrie you have in your mind, not for who I am. It's you need to understand that people have preferences in communication. Now I really believe in profiling, but there's a lot of pros and cons you need to discuss before you can believe in them. But let me, one of the ones I use is Dr. Kobus Neertling's one, the KNI test, that basically split people between the logic side and the creative side. In my world, it refers to people that punt clarity versus people that punt harmony. I'm a left brainer, so I punt clarity. So in my work environment, I sometimes make people cry, and I'm not proud of it because I just want to get to the real answer. I don't give a hoot whether it's a bad day for you or a good day. If the answer is 3, the answer is 3. Let's not lose that. If you're a harmony person, you will let the 3 slip for today if it's not going to kill someone. Now, if it comes to networks, and there was one of the questions that said, so how many times must I reconnect with someone before I get value? No, obviously, and I'll chat about that now, but some people network. For them, it's more a social event, or their networking here happens through social connections, not through clarity connections. And let me try and give you an example. If I go and buy a car, and I'm a left brainer, when I walk into the car dealer, I've already done all my homework. I know what I want, how I want it. So if the salesperson wants to bond with me as a person, I will find it negative. You're not here to bond with me. You're here to sell me a car of which I already know I want. So how important you make me feel is not relevant to me. I want the information, and that will make me feel important. A harmony person will really be, give me some tea, give me some cookies. First, let me get to know you before you sell me a car, and you'll still be able to sway me because I'm buying you with a car because I haven't done all my homework yet. So be knowledgeable about how you approach a client in terms of who they are as a person. Big left brainers, we're not huggers. How many people will extend themselves? They will be more vulnerable as a person. Left brainers don't really make themselves vulnerable. They have to have a lot of trust and long relationships and never box people. But trying to understand when I sell to them, when I'm creating the Corrie in their mind, how would they see that Corrie in terms of their preferences, not in terms of mine. That's why networking is also always giving and taking, because you give something of yourself in return for getting something that you hopefully have predefined to get from it. Then I've made a few others, but let me jump onto my slide. So the first thing when you do networking, know your why and know the client's why. If you don't have a why, you're going to talk rubbish for an hour and most probably find something that can work. But if you go to a meeting thinking beforehand, the client has an expectation from you because their time is valuable. I mean, if I want to speak to someone like, let's say, President Ramaphosa, I can't phone him and say, listen, President, I want to see you in 5 minutes. Can we spend an hour together? He doesn't have that time for me. And realize when you go up the ladder, those people are highly competitive people. They are highly engaged people. They are highly over-engaged people. So their time is extremely valuable. And they will not go to a meeting thinking, I don't really know what I'm going to do today. They will know what they want from it. And on your side, you need to know what you want from it. And generally, it goes down to trust and reliable value. Then back to what Yolanda said, it's not who you are, it's who you know. And on that, I can spend one whole day. I want to connect it to something Walter said. Everything is connected to everything. So whatever I tell Yolanda and Walter, the world will know, maybe in a day, maybe in a week, maybe in a month. And that impacts on your brand, which I'll finish with. That's my caution on networking. If you just network to social and fish, watch out. Everyone in your networks communicates with everyone. And if you give vulnerable information out, if you share information that people think it's not applicable or inappropriate, it will cut some of those links. Networking is like being on stage. It's not spending time with your family. Understand it's a professional environment. And as you grow friends longer and longer and longer, then it opens up. But initially, stick to the common purpose of the meeting. The 5 people you are closest with most probably reflects who you are. And I'm talking in the business environment. If the 5 people closest to you have certain networks that you have access to, I mean, if the 5 closest people to me is Mr. Ramaphosa, Mr. Trump, Mr. Putin, I'm in a very different network than the one I'm in now. So just as a little bit of a practical measure, look at them, they are you. Then one of the very important things that we sometimes forget, people buy from people they know, like, trust, and need. If people don't know you, if you're not visible enough, people don't know you. Doesn't matter how good the Corrie, Yolanda, or Walter might be. If I'm not in someone's head defined and in their quality world, I have no influence on them or very little influence on them. The second one is it helps when people like you. And they can like, and I want to play with like and respect. I dislike a few people in my life, but I have tremendous respect for them. And if I trust them to go to war, I'd rather take them than the ones I like. Understand the difference between the two. Trust is not negotiable. I always say reputation and trust goes together. If I know Walter will not rob a bank. I know that. And I will know Yolanda will not rob a bank. So if someone tells me, yes, you saw that house Walter built, he robbed the bank, I will not believe it. And that's the power of a reputation. They say you build it up in a lifetime and you destroy it in 1 minute. You don't. Your reputation speaks on you when you're not there. And if you're a consistent deliverer, people will say, I don't believe that of Walter. I don't believe that of Yolanda. And that brings me to need. People can like each other, and Yolanda touched on it. I have a lot of people I have brilliant relationships with, but in business, we don't really need each other now. We need each other for favors from time to time. So if you cannot network with someone and get something from it because your whys do not connect, don't write people off. Network is also about having people that will give you a heads up. I mean, in psychology, one of the things that's proven over and over and over, you're only as strong as your support network. And that support doesn't always have to be monetizing what you do. Well, in my case, I always say I'm a comrades runner, that we don't run for the money. We run for that networking situation. Whatever comes from it, whether it's money, whether it's success, whether it's a byproduct of our life's intentions and our attitude. Then I've made another list of a few things on the site which I'll pop, but I want to finish with personal branding. The other day I read a little story where someone says, because everyone talks about personal branding, so what's your brand really? And these profound words were spoken. Your brand is the person that speaks on your behalf when you're not there. Your brand speaks on your behalf when you're not there. That's where all the Corries come together, where the real Corrie, which is me, is not present. So be careful of the Corrie, the Yolanda, and the Walter you create in someone's mind, because that trust of consistent delivery will determine whether you got a strong network, a strong bond, or a weak bond. Then I've got just 2 or 3 other things. It came out in COVID, Walter mentioned it. Your network strength is also equal to your client, your partner strength. In my mind, I always assess my partner's strength. Because if a partner is known to be financially vulnerable, doesn't matter how strong my bond with that partner is, that partner can fall and pull me over. So don't worry only about the connection, worry about what you connect to in terms of an anchor. I mentioned everything is connecting. I mentioned that you're only as strong as your support. I like the fact that exceptional or brokerage power and closure actually goes to exponential power. And then giving and receiving, not always monetary. So that takes us to 55 minutes. We have, I just want to check. Okay, we're still full house. Guys, I'm going to allow 5 minutes for questions. So from Sai asked, what are your success factors? I'm going to be very quick with mine. You are a combination of your talent, your experience, your skills, your qualifications, your energy, and your brand. All of those work together as success factors in my world. Yolanda, over to you. What is your one success factor in one sentence? Same, Walter, your side.
Mine would be really the ability to connect, that coupled with my energy to make sure that my connection is sustainable and is really able to yield the results that I want from the connection, because I go in with a strategy and with a goal in mind. So if I get that, then I know that I'm successful. For me, that has been my factor in success.
Happiness. Walter, from your side?
Fantastic. For me, a big factor of success, 2 things, is the why. What am I trying to achieve in my life? And how does my network speak to that? And how do I speak that out to my network? And lastly is live who you are. So it's very important to be true to yourself, and not to move to places where your skills and talents, and I think Corrie made a whole list there, and it just sort of embodies that. Be where you need to be, and try not to get too distracted. And you always need to self-correct. Always self-correct.
Yep.
That's it.
I like that. Okay, next question. I like this one, Walter. It's for you. What's the future of an engineering manager in the 4IR environment? And I want to add consulting to that as well, because the next question is, how do I tap into the consulting niche as a startup? Now, Walter feels very strong about the future of consulting and how it should be done. So I'm going to ask you, Walter.
Okay, I'm not going to go into my deep thoughts about it. I'll keep it on the top.
Yeah, one sentence sort of approach.
One sentence. I think really look at a human-centered design. So whether you start your own business or worried about what's going on in 4IR and how that, it comes down to really understand your client and what are their needs, because it's not what will happen in the future, I believe, is there will be more of a relationship building and more of a customized solution for clients. So I just want that's sort of just roughly from my side.
Happy, and I think what we need to understand is the word hyper-personalization. Go and Google it. Understand that now that we really understand that there are not one world we all live in, there's actually, let's say there's 7 billion people on earth. There are actually 7 billion and one worlds. That if you want to understand your client, you have to understand what their personal approach would be to things. And if you allow you to understand that I can deliver a personal service and I have a personal value, you can work in any industry. And one thing, Walt, I want to touch on is that whole thing of being your authentic self. You know, I think it was Elon Musk who said, when you sell a product to 10 people, 8 will not be interested, 1 will be interested, and 1 will be a committed buyer. Don't go and convince the other 8 of how good you are. They're going to eat your time. Because I've got a question here that says, Corey, how do you strike that balance? And I mean, that balance is easy for me. 8 out of 10 people are not really interested in your product. And if you spend time on convincing them why it's so good, I think you're losing momentum. 1 person are interested and you can convert them fairly easy to be committed, and 1 person's committed. So for me, I always try and go to the value equation. That's why the client's why and my why, when I go and meet with someone, comes to mind immediately. What can I, in the shortest possible time, give to that person and in return get what I want? They always say, when people say they don't have time, it's not about not having time. It's not getting your priorities sorted. Because we have time for things that are important to us. And that's the important in striking a balance. If I met with someone 5 times, I really like them, but I see no future and I won't give in to 5. Most probably after, I think it's such a profound question. One thing I've learned in my business career, I can tell you within 15 minutes, I can tell you whether we can do something now or not. And not doesn't mean never, it just means not. And I will take another 15 minutes, wrap it up in a very nice way, and move on to my next, because it's your own effective and efficiency that you compromise when you go to something without, and I like what Yolanda said, without a strategy. So if you have a half an hour meeting, and that's why I hate going from 45 minutes to an hour, if you have a half an hour meeting, spend the first 5-10 minutes, just settle things, go straight to your point, see what your value is. And I'm a left brainer, so right brainers will totally disagree with me, because they'll spend 25 minutes on how they like each other, and in 2 minutes they make the best deal ever. That's why deals are made on golf courses and cycling races and stuff, because it's about the cycling, the connection of we want to bond. So here's my answer. Find out who you are. Find out what's your why for connecting. And if your why is unfulfilled after the second meeting, rethink the approach of strategy. But don't waste your time over and over, because you're not getting paid for it. So that's about our questions. I see there are 7 on the chat. And I really promise that we're only going to stick to an hour. So I'm going to finish off by doing 2 things. The first thing is, we've now started a weekly thing where Thursdays, 11 o'clock, we'll have a webinar on SMMEs, where to from now. Last week, we spoke about the real, I had C4G on the program, Catalyst for Growth. It's a company that collects data on SMMEs. What I got from that, 95% of SMMEs couldn't pay salaries during lockdown. 50% of them are not coming back. And we spoke about, so what from there? How do we help people? Because SMMEs, if I remember correctly, makes about 18 to 19% of employment in South Africa, the formal sector. So that was our discussion. We had a long discussion on how do we help from there. That emanated with this discussion, because if you want to save your business, your network's going to do it. If you don't have a network, it's like what Yolanda was saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. If you don't have a network, start building it now. That's the important thing. Okay, and the topic after next week, we got a lot of requests on funding. Angel funding, guaranteed funding, risk funding, all the types of funding, and how do I access funding? How do I do a business plan? That's our next week. 11 o'clock on Thursday, we're going to chat about funding. The week after that, we're going to be back at the topic of today to speak about you and your network. What are the things in you that will disqualify you for being a trustworthy, reliable source in a network? So those are our 4 topics in the next 4 weeks. Last one, Yolanda, Walter, thanks for joining us. I really enjoyed it. I'm blown away by your insight into it. And thanks for the very different angles. I think it was very practical. We still only lost 1 participant, but I'm going to call it a day by saying thank you for your participation. We'll definitely see you around again. And thank you for your valuable insight into helping being practical. To all our participants, thanks for hanging in with us. Have an excellent day. Enjoy. Cheers.